This is Performance Anxiety on the Pantheon Podcast Network, and I'm your host, Mark. Today's guest began his career as a musician, but worked his way behind the scenes, managing some of the biggest tours on the planet. Welcome, Larry McNeny. He's just released a book about his career as a tour manager called Blood, Guts, and No Glory. Larry discusses his early aspirations to become a rock star, his encounters with musicians like Pete Townshend, Roger Daltrey, Eric Clapton, Jimmy Page, and the Bee Gees, and his work managing tours for various bands. He details his experiences managing Eric Clapton's early tours, including memorable moments like touring Europe on a train with Clapton and Muddy Waters, working behind the scenes for the band's final show, which became the Last Waltz. He also shares stories about managing the Bee Gees on their world tours, working with Ozzy and Sharon Osbourne, including planning their Maui wedding, and a lot more. He also talks about his philanthropic work, his many writing projects, and a whole lot more. This is a fascinating look behind the scenes of some of the biggest tours of the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And I want to thank our mutual friend, the incredible Mr. Simon Davies, formerly of Teen Cancer America, for connecting us. Check out Larry's book on TCU Press, find him on Facebook, find us at Performance ANX on socials, grab merch at performanceanx.threadless.com. Just send money through ko-fi.com/performanceanxiety. Now grab a glass of Courvoisier and get ready for a sampling of tour stories from Larry McNeny on Performance Anxiety on the Pantheon Podcast Network.
Hey, I'm Larry McNeny. I was tour manager with Eric Clapton and the Bee Gees and many other bands and Ozzy. I'm on Performance Anxiety Podcast, and welcome to everybody. Thanks a lot. Let me do a better one. Okay, ready? Hi, this is Larry McNeny. I've got a new book coming out, a new memoir called Blood, Guts, and No Glory, about my 40 years on Rock's Road. And I'm here on Performance Anxiety Podcast, and I want you to tune in and listen to my show and listen to all the other wonderful shows that are on this network. It's fantastic, and it'll give you a good insight to what the rock and roll world is all about. There in the background is a painting. I managed a famous painter during right after 2001, right after 9/11. A friend of ours who was a famous painter, quite a famous painter. He was known as America's figurative artist, most well known. Lives in Spain, from Missouri. Called me up and he said, "Would you manage me?"
Wow.
And I was kind of in between jobs at the time. And I said, a lot of people used to call me up to manage them, but they weren't making any money. Michael was making millions every year.
Man.
I mean, we knew each other. My wife knew them from Spain when she lived in Spain. And I said, sure. And I managed him for 5 years. His previous manager in Holland got caught with his hand in the till. I mean, he didn't need to. The guy made enough money, but Michael caught him and he fired him, and he hired me. And for 5 years, I managed him, and I got one of every painting, one of every giclée, actually, not painting. The giclées are considered originals because there's only a limited number.
Okay.
But his original paintings would go for $500,000 to $1 million. The last piece I sold to him was for $4 million. It was a life-size sculpture of a businessman dropping his briefcase and his hat as an angel flew in to kiss him.
Oh,
and
wow.
We sold 20 small versions, and they were about 40,000 a piece. And then this guy in Houston, who was the lawyer for the tobacco industry lawsuit here in Texas, when they had all that.
Yeah.
The winning side, he wanted a life-size version.
Oh.
And so in Italy, where Michael made his name was Michael Parks, the artist, Parkes. You can Google him and see his art. It's beautiful. He ended up, so Michael, they have a thing like a caliper, and for these 4-foot ones, they were able to do this and then figure out what it would take to make it 8.5 feet tall easily.
Wow.
And they did that, shipped it over to Houston. I flew down and met it, and I went to the guy's house, and it was full of art in the lobby of his house. And it was fenced in, a big area, beautiful home, but the gate was open. So I drove in, and
Right.
The butler let me in. The guy wasn't there actually. I met him later on, but in the foyer of the house was Marie Antoinette's birthing chair.
Oh my gosh.
And I went into the lit dining room, living room area, den or whatever it was, big. And I mean, there were paintings just everywhere. Originals of everybody you could think of, and all. So it was really similar to the music business. I compared it to the music business in that Michael being the artist, or the artists were the rock stars. They created the music. And then there was the manager who managed the music like rock managers. And then the record company that was like the galleries, that sell the art.
Okay.
So it was very similarly structured. And it was a lot of fun because I got to go to these big art fairs and at the Javits Center and places like that, and meet all of these really wonderful artists, and it was fun. I really enjoyed meeting artists that think outside the box.
Yeah.
So, anyways,
for sure. Well, of all the things I could have guessed when you said what was sitting there in his foyer, Marie Antoinette's birthing chair would have never entered the picture. So
no.
That was amazing.
It was nor to me. The guy just pointed. I mean, I saw it. It looked like kind of a really ancient dental chair that you would lay back in, but it had stirrups, kind of some sort on it, And he's I think I probably said, what is that,
Yeah.
And the butler told me, and I thought, okay, well, I'm not going to ask any further questions.
I don't blame you. Oh, man.
Yeah.
Larry, thank you so much for joining me this evening. I've been looking forward to this for a while, ever since we spoke with Simon Davies, who I want to give a public thanks to right now for connecting us. Simon is just a wonderful person, and I know if he was going to connect me with somebody, they would be just as wonderful. So I am really appreciative
Thank you.
of this connection and the time you're spending.
And I have to agree with you. Simon, when I've known Roger and Pete from The Who for 56 years or so this year.
Man.
And it was about 2016 or so. Roger, they played in Dallas, and Roger blew his voice out. And so they ended up having to stay over and cancel a couple of shows because he had to see a voice doctor here in Dallas. So he invited me down for dinner, and I took my son with me, who was a grown man, but he was a Who fan as well.
Mm-hmm.
And Roger asked me, he said, what are you doing? And I said, well, I'm kind of retiring, really, and he said, would you be interested in doing some work for Teen Cancer America? I said, sure. I said, I don't know what I could offer. He said, you could just help them coordinate creative stuff, and I said, well, yeah, that's probably about all I can. And he introduced me to Simon. He wrote the most wonderful letter to Simon Davies about me, and said things like, this is the real deal, and kind of make me blush.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors.
And Simon turned out to be one of those guys that now, although he's no longer executive director of Teen Cancer America, is going to be a friend for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
For
sure.
Yeah.
I hope to be able to say the same thing. In fact, I probably should reach out to him. It's been a few weeks.
Yeah.
But he's just, I did as listeners might know, I did a an album for Teen Cancer America. Just actually, I had it done before we even reached out to Teen Cancer America, and that's how I met Simon. And
so the double album?
Yes.
Well, that's the one. Okay, that was my idea, and Kinley, who does the thing with the helping some of the cancer patients, he encourages their music playing.
Yeah.
And he had already mentioned something similar to Simon. And I one day I said to Simon 4 or 5 years ago, why don't we do an album? And let's do it on vinyl.
Yeah.
And he said, great. And we, what an idea. Let's do this, Kinley, and da-da-da-da-da. And so we started assembling people. I got a guy here in Arlington, near Fort Worth, halfway between Dallas and Fort Worth, that was a mixer and an audio engineer and a master, and he also did the cover.
Okay.
And we did that, and then we took the first song and wanted an anthem. We wanted an anthem because what we were trying to do was help teen cancer create an entity of teen cancer. Mm-hmm. Instead of relying on Pete and Roger, which their names will always be at the top of the paper, letterhead. We wanted, teen cancer's got to be something that every woman, every husband are familiar with, because whether it's them or their children may experience it at one time or another. And so we got this guy that he was the vocal coach. In fact, he just passed away, and I'm not going to remember the name here for a minute. It'll come to me. He was the vocal coach for We Are the World.
Oh, wow.
He used to produce he produced Bobby Sherman. He produced the Partridge Family and Ricky Nelson. He did some stuff with that.
Oh, my God.
And we came in, he was probably in his mid to late 70s. I'm now in my mid 70s. However, and wrote this song. We asked him to write this song about being a cancer patient. What would a cancer patient write?
Yeah.
And he wrote this beautiful song. He did a rough demo of it. At his age, the voice was not as sharp as it used to be when he was younger. But he and Quincy Jones were really good friends, and so they worked together quite a lot, and particularly on the We Are the World and all of that.
Yeah.
And he wrote this song, and then we wanted it to be the first song. It is the first song on the album.
Okay.
And I had gone to England. My wife's British, and we go to England a lot. And I'd called to try to get. I wanted to get Adele to sing it.
Oh, wow.
And this was 4 years ago, before she had done the Las Vegas trip and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But right before they were in rehearsals, and I know the father of her manager and her booking agent, who is now with William Morris Endeavor.
Oh, nice.
But their father owned ITV booking agency in London.
Oh, okay.
Who goes all the way back to the 60s, wow. Booking Ozzy and all these rock bands. And so I ended up calling Roger Daltrey, and he said, well, I'll call Adele and see, because they had apartments in London near each other, and they were about singing this song. And then the next day he said, now, who wrote the song? And I told Roger that it was not one of the cancer patient kids. It was a professional songwriter.
Sure, yeah.
But the rest of the stuff, all of the other 23 songs on the album. And he said, I don't think I can do that right. I'd rather have one of the kids write it. So wow. That was okay. That was just something in him, because, he started this and all.
Yeah.
So we ended up, I called Dick Ashby, who manages the Bee Gees. Dick's been with the Bee Gees Stigwoods back in the early 70s.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, okay. And he's still with Barry.
Wow.
He lives on Barry's estate in Miami and with Linda. And probably the most, and in my book, you'll see this. Dick, I mentioned him several times. I spoke to him the other day. Dick Ashby's probably the most organized guy in the music business I've ever met. Great guy. And I called him and I told him what we were doing. And he said, why don't you call and get Olivia Newton-John's daughter, Chloe Latanzi, to sing it? She's got a great voice. And so I did. And I called her, and Chloe ended up singing it. She sang it a week before her mother passed away.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, a tough time.
That's tough.
But she did it out there in Santa Barbara. Oh, gosh. Bob Clearmountain mixed it.
Oh, wow.
For free. I mean, he said, oh, gosh, I'm in.
Man.
And then Bob Ludwig mastered it. He said, well, if Clearmountain's in on it, I was talking to Bob Ludwig's wife, and she said, well, if Clearmountain's doing it, we're going to do it. And so they mastered this first song on the album.
Okay.
And that's how, and we had some of the best players playing on it and all of that. And everybody just did it for fun, for free.
That's awesome.
But the album itself was really as an honorarium for parents of the kids. Some of them, a couple of them have died, but most of them, are survivors. And these weren't kids that picked up an instrument when they got cancer. These were musicians that got cancer and and kept playing and all. And so yeah. And I've got a box or two full of the records. We put it out there. It wasn't meant for commercial use particularly. It was really meant for personal use in families. But I would love to see somebody like Universal take it or somebody, record company, Warner Brothers or somebody take it and go for it, and take it out there and spread it around. But
that would be amazing.
There you go.
That would be wild.
That's how that came about.
That is awesome. And I did a different album for Teen Cancer. I put together a Spinal Tap tribute.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that took 3 or 4 years to put together, and it exploded from about as bloated as the band itself is, because it started off as 11 tracks, and I presented it to Teen Cancer America through the podcast network I'm a part of, and they said, well, we would love some of our ambassadors to contribute to this. And I said, let's do it. And because I had no due date, and it went from 11 tracks to, I think we ended up with 33 or 34. So it's still available.
My copy's on the way.
Well, you can download. I can send you the files because it's download only.
I would love that. I would love that.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I love Spinal Tap, obviously, and I haven't seen the second one, but I mean, but to do something like that for Teen Cancer would be great. That's cool.
Well, we have a limited amount of downloads available because Sony and Universal only gave us permission to have 5,000 downloads for charity, and then after that, we would have to go reapproach them about royalties and all that stuff.
Yeah, well, we'll deal with that. We'll figure it out another time, whatever.
Exactly.
But that's cool. That's cool that you did that. That's great.
So I had the first 11 songs are all former podcast guests. And after that, it's a mix of podcast guests and Teen Cancer America ambassadors, and some are both. So it was a blast. But the reason we're here is to discuss you and the book that's coming out soon. And I want to find out how you got into this business in the first place. I know you've got some incredible stories in this book, and I want.
Did you got the copy to read?
I did. I only got it a few days ago, so I haven't had a chance to read too much of it yet. Yeah. So I'm going to have to plead a little bit of ignorance when we get to some of these questions. No. But
listen, I do that all the time. Every day. I look at my wife and I go, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know.
I do the same thing with my wife. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you started this whole thing by wanting to becoming a musician. So,
Well, you know what? I was, by not wanting to become a sports figure.
right.
In my book it says, yeah, we used to play football like all the kids in Dallas and any residential, middle class neighborhood. You got a front yard and there's a football and a bunch of kids you throw it, and there are young ones and older ones and all that, and sometimes the older ones will jump on the little ones and take advantage and slam you into the mud pile or whatever. Yeah. We had a row of holly bushes in our front yard. So we had a pretty good sized yard and in North Dallas, and I remember getting the ball. I don't know why they gave it to me, and it was two below, and I actually had to tell my editor what two below was. He wrote me, and he's a great editor. He works for the Dallas Cowboys.
Oh wow!
He writes for the Dallas Cowboys, and he's a great guy. And he's working on a really cool book now, but. He said, "I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with this term." And I said, "It's two below the waist. You touch, whoever has the ball, if you touch them two below the waist, you get close enough that they're down. You don't have to tackle them, And but I don't know, somebody pushed me or something happened, and I ended up in the holly bushes, face down in the mud, And I remember, and I was 8 years old or something like that. And I remember spitting out the dirt and thinking, there's got to be something better than this, because and then when the Beatles came along, I mean, literally, the truth of it is, on Ed Sullivan, I was glued to the TV right there the first night and stuff. But I love Bobby Vinn. I love Silhouettes on the Shade, Ricky Nelson. I used to watch Ozzy and Harriet all the time to see Ricky Nelson sing at the end. What a wonderful guy. I mean, I wish I was as handsome as he was, but and I did get to meet his sons later on, and after he had passed away when I was touring with Firehouse. Great kids, but so. A friend of mine had an old guitar that his parents bought from a pawn shop, and it had buttons and lights and whistles, and it was just kind of one of those gaudy guitars, And he pulled it out from under his bed. I was over at his house one evening, and I said, "Oh, that's cool." And so I talked my parents into buying me the guitar that's on the cover of the book. Yeah. It's a Sears Silvertone guitar, cost $63 and plus tax. I don't know, I guess tax at the time. The Sears was the only place you could buy Silvertone. Right. Now, Silvertone is now, get this, based out of Fort Worth, which is right next to me here in Dallas.
Okay.
I called and spoke to the president when we wanted to do a book cover. They asked me, "What do you want to do?" And I drew a picture of my Silvertone, and I drew a couple of crates, because back then in the 60s, 63, we didn't have road cases. There were no road cases. Oh, okay. In fact, my band flew up to Bloomington, Illinois for the Boy Scouts of America to perform representing them in the National Jamboree, and we won. Oh, wow. But we actually had to have a furniture company build the crates for us to ship our amps up there in, because there were no road cases. So I did that. We did that, and then the cover, I drew the guitar, and then a crates, and then on a stage, I've done a lot of theater and all of that. And any blank stage, when you're through with a show, they usually put a single stand-up light, bare bulb out in the middle of the stage and turn it on. Okay. That way you won't walk off the front of the stage if you walk on stage and all of that. I mean, it's just kind of a tradition. It's I think. Okay. And so my cover came from that idea, and they liked it. And so Dan, the publisher, my publisher, I put him in touch with, I called the president of Silvertone, and he said, "Oh, yeah, we've got some of those around. We got some of those vintage guitars around." And he said, "We'd be happy to loan you one for a photo session." I said, great. Well, I'll put you in touch with my publisher. And so they did. They got a photo of it, and then they sent me a picture, and they had some road cases. And I said, no. There were no road cases. These got to be wooden crates. And then the light bulb, and then it had kind of a lampshade on it. I said, no, there were no lampshade, just a bulb, Right. And so that's how the cover came about. But yeah, it was all of that, and then I spent years from 13 till about 21 aspiring to be a rock star.
Yeah.
And, I was 16. Jimmy Vaughn was 15 when I met him. Wow. He was playing, and I'm writing a book now on Larry Levine. Do you know who Larry Levine is?
Yeah.
Okay. The studio, he started Chili's.
Right, yeah.
But he owned a club back then called the Studio Club. And Jimmy's band, Jimmy was hired to play in a band. The guitar player drowned, sadly, here in Dallas. And they needed a new guitar player. And Jimmy was 15 years old. And he had a Telecaster and a little long hair. And I think he was a little bit of a rebel in his family. And went to private school, which, I don't know how often he went, but probably often because Jimmy's he's a pretty bright guy. But however, we met then, and his band called the Chessmen were great. But the bands, we had a great circuit here. I mean, it was ZZ Top, the guy, Dusty and
Billy.
Billy. And Billy Gibbons, well, I don't know if Billy was there, but Dusty Hill and Rocky were in a band called Lady Wild and the Warlocks, and they had blue hair. And we had a great touring circuit around the Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana area. Lots of clubs, lots of fraternity parties, colleges, Wichita Falls, Texas. And, there were 2 or 3 booking agents that would booked bands, and Jack Calmes, and Angus Wynn, who started Shoko. Shoko was a booking agency in the 60s.
Okay.
That's what they did for a living. They booked Jack's band, Sound Unlimited, I think they were. And they would give my band jobs they couldn't take.
Oh, nice.
They'd already booked up, and probably other bands. I'm not just us. But when time came in 1969, I guess it was, and they'd been around a long time at that point, as a booking agency, and made a name for Shoko themselves. And they were in a small, tiny office in the Quadrangle, a little area near downtown Dallas. They got a call from the people who did Woodstock, and they'd done the Atlanta Pop Festival, and said, listen, we're looking for a contact there in Dallas who can put us together a PA system and some lights.
Okay.
You think you can handle that? And they went, yeah. And they did. And Shoko went on to be one of the biggest sound companies in the best in the world.
Wow. And
with Jack and Angus, I don't know, and then other people obviously joined, Jack Maxim and a lot of other people. And then they developed they had a lighting company. They developed Very Light, and that's where Very Light came out of Shoko.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
I had no idea.
If not, there wouldn't be any moving lights.
Wow, I had no idea. That's amazing. Yeah. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors.
Yeah, but it all came out of Dallas. But I was with Eric and several other bands, a lot of other bands that not that I was with particularly, but they would rehearse here. We had a big. Somebody tried to build a film studio here that really, like the Third Coast, like east of the West, and it wasn't going to work. But what they did, they gave us places to rehearse, and so we would come here, rent out the soundstage for a month, and rehearse Eric's show for a month, and that way we didn't have to pay for the road crew to go hotel rooms. They
Oh,
could go
wow.
home to their wives at night, and we just 5 or 6 of us would have, we'd go to the hotel, and so we'd rehearse here in Dallas and either start the tour here or start somewhere else.
Mhm.
But that Shoko and all of that came about out of here, and so I was kind of in an area where in Central America, I met the Who when I was 17 in 1967.
Wow.
I met the Yardbirds in 1965. Dick Clark Caravan of Stars
Okay.
played Dallas Memorial Auditorium. Sam the Sham and the Pharaohs were the headliners.
Oh, wow.
Island and the All Stars, the Yardbirds. There were a number of other Gary Lewis and the Playboys,
Yep.
which was Carl Radel, who ended up going on to play with Delaney and Bonnie and Eric and all of that for years.
Yeah.
May he rest in peace. Great guy. And when I went to that show, and I don't know how I got down there, if I was old enough to drive or what. I don't know how. and we just walked backstage, and I spent an hour and a half talking with Jeff Beck and Jimmy Page.
Oh, my gosh.
I mean, with the Yardbirds, both of them on stage. I didn't want to see any of the rest of the acts. Who cares at that point?
Right.
And Jimmy promised me during our conversation that evening that he had I said, I'd really love to get a Telecaster or something like that. And he said, I've got a Fender Esquire I'll sell you.
Oh, wow.
And now he lived in England, but he said he was going to say, and I thought, oh, fantastic. That sounded like a great idea.
Oh, yeah.
And we exchanged addresses, but I never got the Esquire, and I never paid him anything either. But it was for a young 16, 17-year-old kid, it was just great. And then at 17, I met the Who, and who were my idols at the time. I was more of a guitar player. I didn't practice enough.
Right.
I didn't learn my scales as well as I should have. I saw Pete play, and I thought, oh my gosh, that's me. And little did I know, I was kind of cutting off my own nose. But I met them in 1967. We took them out to a club after the show. Okay. And we left the show after. We didn't even stay to see the Hermits,
Oh, yeah.
the Blues and the Who, and then we left. And we took them to a club. We ended up going to an apartment where all the bands had apartments in this one complex. Oh. Sat up all night listening to Pete sit on a stool in a living room of this apartment, talking to all these aspiring young rock stars.
Oh, wow.
It was great.
Oh, man.
I gave him my Les Paul Jr. I had bought. $50
Wow.
paid for it. And he said, to smash. He said, really? And I said, yeah. They were going to Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
Okay.
And I said, I'll come down there, and my dad had an 8mm camera. You had to wind up each time,
Yep.
And I flew down, and several of the other guys went with me, and we went down to Baton Rouge to this stadium, small stadium, maybe held 18,000 people or so. And before the show, Pete said to me, he said, how do you want me to break this? And I went, well, what do you mean? And he said, do you want me to break it where you can put it back together? And I said, or just break it where it's, inoperable.
Right.
And I said, break it where you can put it back together. So I have an 8mm video of him doing that.
Oh my gosh.
Show. Except there's a couple of cuts where I have to stop to rewind the camera.
Right.
Of him doing that. And, there's no sound or anything, but I've got it. And he gave me back the guitar. I brought it home to Dallas, and in my dad's shop, somehow I glued it back together.
Oh my!
And I guess there was some kind of super glue at the time. I don't remember it. I ended, and my parents were cool. I mean, they supported me. I would make phone calls to England and I would convince the English operator to call somebody at their home who had an unlisted number.
Oh my gosh.
And they would do it and say, I got Larry McNeny on the phone from America. Would you talk to him? And they would put me through.
Oh my gosh.
It was ridiculous. And my parents, she'd say, well, what was that called in England? And I'd tell her, and she'd go, oh, okay, you know. So anyways, I shipped the guitar to Pete at the end of the tour.
Oh my gosh.
After I got it glued back together. And a couple of years later, there was an article, Neiman Marcus did a British fortnight, and there was an article in, I think it was in New Music Express. He said, our first tour of America, and he wrote an article. He said, this incredible young American guy kept giving me these guitars like I gave him multiple guitars. Right. It was just one, but so a few years after, I mean, I'd always see them. We kept in touch. He and I wrote back and forth. So I've got about a half a dozen letters. We used to be pen pals.
Oh wow!
And then I got to be good friends with Daltrey, but we were friends, and they were playing on the roof of an arcade, a State Fair arcade in Oklahoma City.
Okay.
Keith Moon's 21st birthday era time, and they did 3 shows for $8,500 or something.
Oh my gosh.
Friday night, Saturday afternoon, and Saturday night. And they did a quick one while he's away, which they hardly ever did. And I asked Pete, I said, what happened to the Les Paul Jr.? And he said, I took it back to, I got your package in England, and I put a new neck on it. And he said, it was my favorite guitar. I love that guitar. And he said, until it got stolen.
Oh.
Yeah, and so, I mean, obviously it was gone at that time. And
man,
like Eric, he's pretty much one that, you know, when something like that happens, that's kismet. You know,
yeah.
It's meant to be. But when I graduated at 18 from high school, my parents sent Pete a graduation announcement.
Oh my!
Because I had his home address, and then he wasn't married at the time, still single and all that. And he sent me his Union Jack coat as a graduation present.
Oh my God!
Yeah, I mean, imagine me going to the front door to the mailman knocking, and I open this package, and there's this coat.
Oh my gosh!
It wasn't the original one, I'm sure. It was one of the ones that was, you know, back when Entwistle started wearing them, which was kind of a few years later, you know, after Pete's original thing. But anyways,
still,
I mean, it was a fun era back then too, you know.
That sounds incredible. So how did you go from just being a musician, hanging out with these guys, to working with them and tour managing?
After my band, because funny enough, I thought about this last night or the night before. Probably one of the reasons my band, I had 3 other guys, a singer, a bass player, and a drummer, the drummer's still my best friend. The bass player lives in Nashville. We're still close, and the singer lives here, and we're still close. We wrote our own songs, and probably, this is gosh, I've never said this before, but probably because I wasn't, a great guitar player. I mean, I was really good at rhythm, and I learned to play lead, but I didn't learn to play lead like Stevie or Jimmy Vaughn or Eric or anybody like that. You know, my mind was kind of hunt and peck till I figured out how not to hit the wrong notes. But
like a lot of us.
When the band broke up, we moved out to California twice, and we won every battle of the bands that we would attend.
Wow.
It was always like $200 entry fee. You'd win, or $50 entry fee. You'd win. If you won $250 and a record deal. So the record deals never materialized. That was just to get you to put $50 up.
Oh, geez.
But we get the money, which helped, pay the rent and what little food we had. We lived out there for about 3 years, 2.5 years, on and off. We came back once to make some more money back in Texas, and then went back out.
Oh, man.
had we have stayed together, kind of like Van Halen, after attrition,
Yeah.
you do it for so long, eventually you're going to get there.
Yeah, yeah.
They did. They worked so hard and played so many places that finally people couldn't ignore them anymore.
Right.
Well, they kept ignoring us. We just didn't have the attrition. But after that, the band broke up. The drummer and the singer came back to Dallas. I stayed out in L.A. for a while with the bass player, and I ended up coming back to Texas and trying to figure out what to do and all. And it was really about a year. I mean, I even tried to play bass. I thought, see if I can do that.
Yeah.
No. And I had a girlfriend who's her best friend had a boyfriend who was an organ player out of Tulsa.
Okay.
And he had just gotten back from 461 Ocean Boulevard, playing on Eric's comeback album.
Oh, wow.
And the Tulsa group was Dick Sims, Jamie Oldacre, and Carl Radle. And they had Jamie and Dick had played with Bob Seger, and that's where they met Marcy Levy.
Okay.
Who is one of the backup singers. And Carl, who Eric knew from, Derek and the Dominoes and other things, he called up Carl one day and said, listen, I'm going to go in and do an album. Can you put me together a band? And that's how he assembled these guys, because Carl knew them in Tulsa.
Yeah.
And they went and did 461 Ocean Boulevard, and I thought, they're going to need somebody eventually. And I moved to Tulsa with my girl. And I worked in this office there of the guy who did Carl's books and took care of his house while he was out of town, because he was gone, 10, 11 months a year.
Yeah, yeah.
Carl was a wonderful guy. Had a really nice house out in Claremore, Oklahoma, which is where Will Rogers is from. And it was about a year and a half. I lived out near Oral Roberts University in an apartment, and then I got a house in town with my girlfriend. And one day I was at this office that I didn't have to pay to go in there, but I had to pay for my phone expenses and all that. I was kind of given a desk.
Yeah.
And fortunately, the good part was they took every magazine. They took Billboard and they took Rolling Stone. They took all of these magazines that were industry magazines, and so I didn't have to subscribe to them. And first thing I do is go to the want ads, let's see what. And so I'd do that, and I'd work on different things for Eric. There was a girl that was infatuated with Eric and Robert Plant, and there was something a little mentally challenged, I might say.
Okay.
And she would write them. She got their manager's address and write them. And I saw you, and I'm just in love with you. And I was called. Roger Forrester called, who was Eric's manager, Ricky Hill Agency, the office there in Tulsa. Can you send somebody down to Dallas and meet this woman, this girl? She actually lived in Dallas, and get her to stop writing these letters, because they were kind of getting a bit over the top, threatening almost. I knew we were meant to be together. When I was watching you up front, I saw the lights shining in my eyes, which were just the lights from the stage.
Right.
Really.
Yeah.
And so I flew down. I flew down here. The guy, one of the limousine drivers that I'd known, picked me up, and Sunday morning we drove to this apartment building in Denton, Texas, and it was not a very nice apartment building. It was like 10:30, 11 o'clock. I figured she'd be there by then, and I had to go in and tell her, you need to stop doing this, and explain to her why, and just kind of. Because that was my initiation. But then about 6 months later, I was in the office, and one morning I got in early, and Julie was there. And Julie was one of the girls that worked for Stigwood's. And when Stigwood kept going bankrupt,
right.
in England, he worked for Brian Epstein.
Yeah.
And after Brian died, he tried to manage the Beatles, but they weren't going to have any of it. They were into Apple. and all of that at the time. But Stigwood went bankrupt a couple of times, the story I heard. And this last time, he offered all the people that worked for him a piece of the action if they would put, work for him for 6 months for free or whatever, or put some money in. I don't know what the real story there is.
Yeah.
But Julie was the only one who decided not to do it, as far as I know. She ended up coming to Tulsa and marrying Willie Spears, who ended up being Eric's guitar tech for years. So she could stay in America.
Oh, wow.
And the rest of them, Stigwood, the rest is, Stigwood went on to make millions.
Yeah.
And Julie didn't. The other people got a piece of the action. Here again, I don't know the whole story of all that, but Dick Ashby and Roger Forrester and Bill Oakes and a lot of people stayed with Stigwood through that hard time, and it paid off for them.
Wow.
In a big way. But I ended up going to Tulsa, and I got that phone call one day, and it was Carl, and he said, Julie said, Larry, Carl's on the phone for you. And she kind of looked at me with a questioning look, like, why would Carl be calling you?
Yeah.
And so I answered, and Carl said, Larry, what are you doing? And I said, well, as usual, I'm just looking for work, da, da, da. And he said, how would you like to come down and go to work for Eric? Roger, his manager, thought he could handle this tour by himself, but he realizes that he can't.
Wow.
So, there were, with Yvonne Elliman and George Terry in the band and all, we had about 47 to 50 pieces of luggage.
Oh, jeez.
And we had our own private plane, and Roger just needed somebody else. I flew down. I was stunned, really. I said, yeah, I'll be there. He said, when can you come this afternoon? I said, sure. He said, there'll be a ticket at the airport, and come here's where you come. It was to Dallas, which is my home.
Yeah.
So I didn't, it wasn't like going to New York City that I'd only been to once or twice before. It was. So I told my girlfriend at the time, I said, I'm going to be gone for a couple of months, bye. But she was happy for it at the time. I know, because I'd worked hard for this. And, I hadn't worked hard for this particular position, but it was on the cards. It was in my cards.
Yeah.
And I flew down here and met Roger and the band, and very similar to my situation with Ozzy. We struck it off great at a private plane. It was a Viscount 4-engine turbo prop plane, and the first show was in Miami. Okay. It was in Florida, but we stopped in Miami. We were staying in Miami, and Roger, after rehearsals, he said, "Listen, I found out that the plane's going to take 5 hours to get to Miami because it doesn't fly real high, like 3,500 feet or something."
Okay.
So I'm going to take the band by commercial jet,
Yeah.
And you ride with the luggage in the plane. And so here I am. I've been there 4 or 5 days, and I'm on this private plane all by myself with a stewardess and anything I wanted, all the luggage, and we're just cruising along. I can look out the window and see, all of America.
Right, yeah.
We got there, and it was just, that was the start of my career. Fortunately, I was good at what I did. I was good at getting, and I still am. I believe, knockwood. I was good at getting a lot of people to do one thing, do their job, which ended up being one thing. Not that I did their jobs or I had to tell them how to do their jobs, but, keeping people happy, keeping people motivated, keeping people feeling that they're getting a fair shake.
Yeah.
Is so important for the head of a company. I can think, all those places. So, my job was that. Initially, it was, more of the, making sure the band were up and their luggage was out, an hour before they left the hotel.
Right.
And they would come with Roger, and I would already be at the plane with the luggage. That was kind of the first tour or two, and then things started changing, and my position started accelerating and advancing a little bit. At the end, the first tour we ended, we went across from Florida to L.A. I remember walking in Roger's room in L.A., and he said, "Gosh, I wish we hadn't come here," because Eric knew too many people.
Oh, okay.
The phone would ring off, and so Roger and Eric, had the phones cut off.
Oh, wow.
Taken out of the room in L.A. because Roger was a great manager for Eric, and particularly at that time, because Eric didn't need the distraction of people wanting to come see him and give him stuff.
Oh, yeah.
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 I mean, with all good intention, but that wasn't the plan, and that wouldn't have done Eric any good.
Right.
But I walked into Roger's room, and there was Jeff Beck and Eric Clapton playing. Now, my band had opened up with the Jeff Beck band in 1968 at a club here in Dallas twice.
Oh, cool.
It was Jeff Beck, Ronnie Wood, Mickey Waller, and Rod Stewart.
Yeah.
They did, the first time we did it, they did 2 shows for $750 at the club, and we were the opening act. And the second time around, I think they made $12.50 or something like that.
Wow.
They tried to get our guitar player to go with them to go to England to join their band, because we had a great guitar player. He's since passed away. But they went back and joined the Faces.
Right.
And they called Steve up, the guitar player, and said, "Listen, I'm sorry, we something's come up," and But no, it was good. And then kind of from the Eric period, Eric was. There were no PDs paid, per diems paid at that time. Not there. Roger covered everything. Now the crew had PDs. They got $35 or $30 a day and all. But the band and me and Roger, we were there's a difference between doing your laundry at a Holiday Inn and doing your laundry at a Hilton.
Right.
You got $450 to do your underwear. Or 35 cents to do your underwear. You thought, and the road crew would put all their stuff. Each of them had a laundry bag, and they'd pile it all together, all these laundry bags, and somebody would go out and do the washing that day, put everything back in the laundry bag.
Okay.
You couldn't, being with the band, you couldn't do that. You go to a Four Seasons and you wash a pair of socks for $7.50. So my deal was always with the bands I worked with, and I was very fortunate. I know that. I mean, I will be the first one to hold my hands up and admit. But, anything over 3,000 miles, and it's business or first class.
Nice.
You pay for all of my laundry. You pay for all of my phone calls. Because I would call my wife or girlfriend or whoever, and when it became my wife, that was even more important.
Right, yeah.
But you pay for all the phone calls, I mean, if I'm in Australia, the Bee Gees, for example, they had to pay for everything,
Wow.
And
okay.
People ask me nowadays, who was the best band you ever toured with? And, without a doubt, the Bee Gees were probably the best. Eric was great.
Yeah.
Eric was really great. Just the system of touring, and Eric was doing a bottle and a half of Cavassier a day. I carried around a briefcase, an airline pilot's briefcase, the square ones.
Yeah.
And with a bottle, 2 bottles of Cavassier, a glass, and a bottle of 7-Up. They call it lemonade in England. But it's like 7-Up or Sprite. And we'd lighten up with Eric in the middle of the day. But I mean, he would drink all day. But he was a mild drunk, I mean, he would just get mellow. Jack Bruce, and when I was with Jack was a wonderful, extremely talented musician, extremely talented. And in fact, I talked to Simon Phillips, Tony Hymas, and Huey Burns, who were three of the top musicians who played with Jack. Hugh Burns went on to play with Jerry Rafferty. He played the lead on Baker Street and all of that.
Oh, okay.
He went on to play with all of Wham's material.
Wow.
Tony Hymas played with Beck.
Yes.
Long time.
Yeah.
And the Lonely Bears. Have you seen the Lonely Bears?
No.
1992 Montreux Jazz Festival. The Lonely Bears. Look it up.
I'm going to write that down right now.
And Terry Bozzio on drums.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, and Tony Hymas and Hugh Burns. Anyways, I'm going to see them when I go to England here in a few weeks. We're all going to. Simon Phillips is playing at Ronnie Scott's on the 25th and 6th of May.
Oh, man.
With his Protocol Jazz Band. So we're all going together.
Oh.
Anyhow, Jack and Ozzy were similar in that, you could put lay stuff out in front of them, from whatever to drugs to whatever alcohol, and they would do the whole lot.
Yeah.
And then they would turn angry or not be able to handle it. Whereas Eric, he would just mellow out. I mean, he would just, and pretty much he stuck to the Cavassier. He might do a hit here and there, but it wasn't around a lot. I mean,
Okay.
Not with him. It was maybe with the band, but not. They knew to keep it away from him as well, or Roger would probably clump him upside the head.
Oh, wow.
Roger was a good manager for Eric because he knew how to keep Eric needed to stay occupied. He needed to stay interested.
Okay.
Or when things were going too good for Eric and then it was boring, that's when he got into trouble.
Okay.
That was Roger's phrase, not mine. And Roger, I mean, they would do things like play a bull ring in Ibiza, Spain. We did 2 tours of Europe on a private train. We had our own private train. It was a German engine, a German sleeper. Everybody had their own compartment. We had a French dining car for the Orient Express and 2 French chefs.
Oh, my God.
And we had Hermann Göring's lounge car. The first tour, we hooked on to another engine or another train going to the cities we were going to, and would be dropped off on the siding. The second tour we did by the train, we had our own engine.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, it was. I saw the sun come up every day for several weeks. Which I can't say was a wonderful thing to do. But it was a wonderful thing to do then.
Right.
I don't know how many brain cells I left behind, but probably a few. But everybody, we had a good time. The food was great. I remember one of my favorite times was Muddy Waters was opening for us on a tour. We did Europe first, and when we went into the first gig, Eric didn't want to go in. He wanted to go straight to the dressing room and hide out because Muddy Waters was an idol of his, and Eric Muddy was already playing, so we never did sound checks with Eric because Eric hired the best, and he and Roger hired the best, and we knew that they were going to make Eric sound good.
Okay.
And that's what Eric relied on and Roger relied on. So we didn't need a sound check.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And then so when we came, the opening act was on. So this was Muddy Waters, and Muddy was doing the whole tour with us and an American tour.
Oh, man.
And Eric was just flabbergasted, and so he didn't want to come out. And finally, it, kind of eking out, after a couple of days and all that. Finally, he ends up on the side of the stage, and finally, Muddy looks over and Pine Top Perkins and all, and they nod at him, and then next thing you know, Eric's out there playing a Muddy song with him, and then the next thing you know, Muddy comes up on stage during Eric's set and all, and it towards the end of the European tour, Muddy said, Eric asked Muddy to come on the train for one night, with us.
Yeah.
He would come on our train, and he said, well, sure. So here I am sitting this little boy from Dallas. Here I am sitting in a train booth, an Orient Express train booth, but and Buddy was across from me, and Roger was next to me, and Eric was across next to Muddy. And we had whatever we had to eat, and it was always delicious.
Yeah.
And usually, but we'd eat before we'd pull out and head on to the next town, but while the train was stable. And so Muddy and I got to talking and about where the prettiest girls and the women in the world were.
Okay.
Prettiest women in the world were. And
topic?
we both agreed Texas. I mean, I'm from Texas, but Buddy's from Chicago.
Yeah.
But he said, yeah, Texas probably the best. And I said, there's a lot of beautiful girls and women in Dallas, and he said, yeah, you're right. He said, but then Austin is pretty good too.
Yeah.
And I said, oh yeah. I said, I've got a good friend in Austin who plays blues down there. I said, Jimmy Vaughn moved down there years ago after his rock era. And I mean, Jimmy was a rock. He could play Hendrix, and his band played all of Sgt. Pepper's.
Oh wow!
I mean, they were great, but they never played in front of people. They learned it and played it. But Jimmy was always had the blues in the back of his mind. Yeah. And Muddy said, Jimmy is one of my favorite guitar players.
Wow!
And Eric's sitting there next to him, and I could see this, and his mouth dropped open. He goes, who's Jimmy Vaughn?
Oh my God.
I've never heard of this. And here's Muddy Waters, his idol, saying, this guy. And Roger going, I don't know. And so we explained it. And we ended up doing an American tour with Muddy, which was great. And then the next tour here in America, the Fabulous Thunderbirds, Jimmy's band, blues band, were opening up.
Wow.
They had bought a flexible bus, an old flexible bus, so the old style Buddy Holly buses,
Oh, man.
And they were going to go out. They were opening up the tour. And that was the tour where it was 58 shows. We did 8 cities, and Eric fell ill he had 3 ulcers.
Oh.
And the ulcers, he had some bad teeth that were exposed roots, and Courvoisier probably didn't help. But he was taking a drug called Vegenin. It was like aspirin with a little bit of codeine in it and all that. But he would take those for the pain for the teeth, which ended up working the wrong way on the stomach. They eating holes. And so on the way back from Madison, Wisconsin, I think it was, to Minneapolis or St. Paul, where we were staying at the Radisson, Eric got pretty sick, and they took him straight to the hospital. The doctor that saw him, that was on call that night, was one of the doctors who invented Tagamet. He was one of the many doctors, I guess, involved. Wow. Dr. Votel. And Eric spent about 6 to 8 weeks in the hospital. We had to cancel the rest of the tour. So the Thunderbirds had bought this bus, come out on tour, and we had to cancel 50 shows.
Oh, wow.
And it evidently rang the bell at Lloyd's of London. A certain amount of insurance coverage rings the bell if it goes under.
Oh, wow.
And it was a sad thing, not only for the Thunderbirds as well. I mean, because they didn't get to play for all of those people they could have.
Yeah.
Although they went on to do well, and Jimmy's gone on to do well. Stevie wasn't on the circuit. Stevie was probably doing the Bowie thing. He was probably in the back corners. Because I remember Stevie as a little boy, but not not Stevie like we knew him.
Right. Right.
But so that was kind of how Eric came to learn about the Vaughan brothers. I did another tour with Eric, with Henry Spinetti, Dave Marquis, Chris Spedding.
Oh, wow.
And Gary Brooker.
Okay, yeah. Oh.
Carter Shade Pale and all of that. I mean,
yeah.
And Albert Lee.
Oh, wow.
And so, I Eric had let all the band in Tulsa go and had gotten a new band in. It was time for a change, I guess. I thought, I'd probably go, I did a tour with Eric, and when I went straight to the Bee Gees 89 tour, 79 tour.
Okay.
And the Disco Staying Alive, it was actually Spirits Having Flown. And when all the Tulsa band got back home, they all got a telegram. Sorry, no gigs imminent. Suggest you find another gig.
Ooh.
Eric.
Wow.
Yeah, long story. However, but I was called to go back out with Eric with this new band, which surprised me after I'd finished the Bee Gees tour and all that. And great band. And I was really kind of surprised that Eric would let first Albert Lee get up there, and who was Eric's favorite guitar player.
Oh, really? Okay.
He's quoted as saying that.
Wow.
Albert what a nice guy. He lives out in L.A., but English.
Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful guy. But when he played Country Boy, I mean, man.
Yeah.
And then Albert introduces Gary Brooker, and Gary comes out and he does Whiter Shade of Pale. I mean, that would have been enough right there for the price of the ticket.
Oh, for sure.
One night he did do Salty Dog, which was pretty cool.
Oh, cool.
But then Eric came out, and then they did Eric's set, and it was magical, the whole tour. All the guys were nice. Gary was great. Henry Spinetti was great. Chris Spedding was he was really nice, but very quiet, Okay. He's kind of that guy.
Yeah.
And Albert's great. He and I are still friends, and we keep in touch.
Oh, nice.
He's still out there playing like a madman,
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, he's got a band called Hogan's Heroes, and he tours Europe and America and all of that. He's bigger more in Europe than here, but what a talent,
Oh yeah, he's an amazing player.
I've been really, really, really lucky to do what I did. Then I go on to the groups like what I did Debbie Gibson, which is another story. I did Firehouse. I did a band. I was at home one night, actually here in Dallas. I did Firehouse, which were great. I mean, they were one of the hair bands of the night.
I remember them.
And they were fantastic. Great guys, great music. Couldn't have been nicer.
That guy's vocals are incredible.
Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand. We did the Middle East 2 or 3 times.
Oh, wow.
Together, and it was wonderful. And then I did a band. I did Three Dog Night and Linda Ronstadt with Marvin Hamlish. Linda Ronstadt and Marvin Hamlish together with the Pittsburgh Symphony.
Oh, wow.
Which was really interesting. Kind of a bit of a slow thing because we're doing sheds, we're doing amphitheaters, and Marvin kept every once in a while he'd look down and pull something out of his pocket, and he'd look down while he's conducting. This 60-piece orchestra,
right?
And one night I decided I got to find out what he's doing. I said, Marvin, after the show, what are you looking at when you pull something out? What is that you got pulling out of your pocket? He said, I'm checking the Yankees scores. He said I could conduct this with my eyes closed.
Oh.
He was checking the Yankee scores.
That's amazing.
So Firehouse was good. And then one night I was sitting at home, not doing much with my wife, who I met when I was with Ozzy. I planned Ozzy's wedding, by the way.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, in Maui and all of that. Another long story. Maybe we'll make this a double.
Okay.
Sometime. But it was fun. Working with Sharon was great. It was magic as long as you were on her team.
I've heard that. Yeah.
If you weren't on her team, you'd wish you were.
Right.
She and Ozzy got married at sunset on the beach in Maui. We went to Japan after that and did a tour. But she called me up one night. This was a few years later, and Ozzy wasn't on tour at the time. And she said, Larry, what are you doing? I said, well, I just finished dinner. I was watching a TV show with my wife or something. She said, well, can you come to London tomorrow and in Switzerland tomorrow night. And I went, oh, okay, what's going on? I've got a band called the Choir Boys I manage. Now, Quire, they were originally called the Queer Boys, but the record, Atlantic Records or whatever they were on, EMI or whatever, didn't like that name, so they called them the Choir Boys.
I remember them, yeah.
And so I said, okay. And, you know, it was going to be 3 months in Europe, and the records were selling well. And their tour manager evidently was kind of falling apart. I mean, it was a little much for him to handle.
Okay.
And I said, sure. And so I flew over there. She said, fly to London, come pick up some money, and then hop on a plane to Switzerland and meet the band all. And I did that. I got into Sharon's office, and there, as I walked in, there was a life-size cutout of the Choir Boys, all 6 of them.
Okay.
And I looked at them, and I looked at this picture, and I thought, they look like Johnny Depp's Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh! I thought, what have I done now?
Are you on Sharon's good side or their bad side?
You know, it was there. The door was open. I could look at them. You know, I could turn around and go, oh, girl. And so she gave me some money and explained a little bit about they'd sold a bunch of records. They were a lot like the Black Crowes in that they played good old 3-bar rock and roll blues. You know, rock and blues, and they were great. Spike was a great singer. His voice was raspier than Rod Stewart's, but the band were all really nice and good. And so I flew to Switzerland and met them. We did a bunch of dates together over there. We did Japan together. We did more Europe together. We did a tour of England together.
Oh, wow.
And then Sharon came to me. A good friend of mine, Richard Cole, another many stories there. Richard Cole was the tour manager for Zeppelin for all 8 years they were together.
Yeah.
He and I got to be good friends. We were good friends. And he was there because he was kind of helping Ozzy stay off the sauce for a while.
Okay.
And because Richard had gotten sober and been on AA for a long time. And so we were backstage at some show. It was towards the end of the English tour. And Sharon said, listen, we're going to go do a tour of America. And I said, okay, well, what's the itinerary? She said, well, there is none.
Oh.
We're going to book it as we go. You know, the agent's going to book it. She had a big agent in New York and all of that. He was a great guy. And you know, no doubt he could find the dates. You know, I knew him really, really well. But she said, but we don't have an itinerary. You know, we're just going to go and do the best we can.
Oh my God!
And I said, Sharon, I can't do that. You know, I've got a wife at home. We've had 1 or 2 kids at the time. I don't remember. We ended up with 4, but we had. And so she said, okay, but I understand. You know, and she was real pleasant about it. You know, I wasn't on her bad side at that point.
Right.
But Richard took them on tour, you know, and I went home, and I think that's when I ended up doing the art thing for a while. And Richard took them on tour around. I don't know how long they toured here in America, but they were great. They were a great band. They still are. Griff is still with them. Spike left. Firehouse, jumping back, Firehouse, C.J. Snare, the singer, passed away about 1.5 years ago.
Oh,
but
wow.
they've got a new singer, so they're back. They're still out. Oh. You know, I mean, what happened was when Spotify and Rhapsody and Apple and all this came along, and the royalties took a nosedive.
Yeah.
All the bands had to go back out on the road.
Yeah.
And that's you know, if you want to make some money and not work at McDonald's, that's what you got to do.
Yep.
And they did. And, you know, I see Bill Leverty every once in a while from Firehouse, and I still talk to Griff and Spike when I go to England and, you know, keep in touch. But when I saw them at the 100 Club about 6 or 8 years ago, and I took my wife and daughter. My daughter was about 18 at the time, and it was fun.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. No.
That is incredible. Oh,
I've really been lucky, and I'm going back to England now. A good friend of mine, Alan Rogan, who was Townshend's guitar roadie for 45 years, but he also did Eric. He did Keith Richards. He did the Young Brothers from AC/DC.
right.
He did their guitars. But Alan was from England, and funniest guy, and knew his business better than anybody. In about 2017, 18, he died of cancer.
Oh,
And Pete, he turned it over to a new guy and all that. And there was they waited about 4 years before they did a memorial service for him in England. About 250 people showed up in this building, this banquet hall, and they had a memorial service. His daughter, who's in her 40s, was there with her sons, and one of them played piano. I mean, he was, and it was great. Rob Fraboni, who's a good friend of mine and a record producer, produced one of Eric's albums, and Bonnie Raitt, and he was vice president of Ireland for a while, and
wow.
Bob Marley, and a bunch of people. We keep in touch. He was a good friend of Alan's, and he was the MC of the memorial. And what I did, Alan wanted all of his ashes to be scattered around the world, and so she put them all in a little vial, a little black lidded vial, which mostly where that goes.
Yeah.
She mailed one to me, but the rest of them went all over the world, to record stores, to music people that he knew.
Okay.
Mine never came. And so we were back in England a couple of years ago, and she said, "Here's your envelope. Here's your ashes." And it was on the envelope. It said from the American Post Office. It said, "We do not deliver drugs by mail." It hadn't been opened, but in that little vial, they thought that the ashes were some other kind of illicit drug.
Right. Oh my God.
So she gave me some anyway. I took my 1960 Stratocaster that I still had of mine, and I took the neck off. I drilled a hole up in the upper part of it here.
Okay.
And the part that goes up under your left shoulder. I'm right-handed. I stuck the vial up there, and I sealed it in with JB Weld. And I had the pick guard. It was it was white, black, white. I had it etched with sayings of Alan's.
Okay.
And the pick guard saying, I put all new things on it, so it looked really nice.
Yeah.
And I gave it to Carrie for her family, for Alan's family. It's never to be played again. And it's really something for them to. I wanted to find maybe a plastic, like Hard Rocks have, a plastic case to hang this guitar in, because there's Alan. It's Alan. You know. So that's one of the most enjoyable things I've gotten to do. I mean, he was somebody that I cared about. Pete loved. Everybody loved Alan. And I hope I'm going to see the guitar while I'm over there. A guy that owns Hank's Guitars right off Shaftesbury Avenue, and he owns London vintage guitars where you can go and buy any guitar. He sold Eric's pre-World War II Martin guitar for £337,000.
Oh
recently.
My gosh!
This is a guy that knows how to sell. He sells great guitars.
Wow!
But he's going to put it in the window of his shop for a few weeks, just on display.
Oh, that's amazing.
So now I'm kind of doing philanthropic things and things. I write a lot. My book I've written. I've got musicals. I've got books. I've written sequels to. I've written a sequel to Casablanca. I've written a sequel to Pete's Dragon. I've written a sequel to a bunch of stuff and original stuff. I've got stage plays. I've got 2 patents. I've got a patent that I'm working with a guy right now for a novelty item that they say is worth $1 billion.
Oh, wow.
If it gets out on the market. I mean, well, I say that, but I mean, nobody's written me a check yet. So, but as far as I'm concerned, it's a joke until somebody writes a check. But the guy knows everybody, and we'll see what happens. But other than that, I live a nice, quiet life on 13 acres here in North Dallas, north of Dallas, and I've been more than blessed,
You've got some incredible stories, and I could keep you here all night chatting about them. But I'm sure you've got more important things to be doing than talking to me on this podcast. So,
well, no, listen, I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm here anytime. Like I said, we haven't even touched on the stories. There's a lot of others. At the end of the first tour, let me jump back. The first tour we ended in L.A. With Beck and Eric playing pool. Roger said to me that day, he said, "Guess what? I booked an extra date tomorrow or day after tomorrow. We're going to go do this. It's in San Francisco." I said, "Oh, okay. What is that?" He said, "We're going to go do a thing called the Last Waltz. It's the band's last concert."
Oh, wow.
And my first tour, the last show we did was the Last Waltz.
Oh, my gosh.
And Rob Perboni, my good friend and Alan's good friend and all, and he and I talk still to this day. Rob is the guy that was mixing the sound for everybody.
Oh, wow.
And he and Martin Scorsese did the movie.
Right.
And it's all done with real feel. They put it back. They originally did it in analog. They transferred it to digital, and they realized that digital audio and digital photography are an irritant.
Yeah.
And so they've turned it back. They put it back in through one of Rob's creations called Real Feel, or he was involved in it, and it's back in the analog. And it's what it really should be.
Oh, that's amazing.
That was a day and a half, that whole day right there. It was just, other than that, it's been a pleasure. I'll anytime I'm here, I'm happy to do it.
We definitely need to do another one, because I want to hear some stories about Ozzy and the Bee Gees and some of the other bands.
We really didn't get into Ozzy. There's a lot of fun stuff to tell there. A lot of fun stuff. The Bee Gees stuff was, I did 2 world tours. Well, the first one was supposed to be a world tour. We did America. The second one was a world tour 10 years later. And it was just, the Bee Gees were the loudest band I ever toured with.
Really?
The groupies, they were women dressed, had high heels. I mean, there were no tennis shoes and, torn jeans. This was class.
Yeah.
And it was, we traveled with their mother and dad, the wives, the kids.
Wow.
It was a special thing. And I can't thank Dick Ashby and Barry and Robin and Morris. I mean, they were great.
That's so incredible.
One day we'll do it again. I'm always here. You let me know when you want to do it again.
Absolutely. I'll reach out when you get back from your travels, and we'll schedule part 2. When is the book coming out? When can people look for the book?
The book is released May 12th here in America and in England.
Perfect.
All right, and here's a blessing for Simon Davies. Simon, keep singing, because he's becoming a crooner.
I've heard.
And keep it up, because find your voice. Find the voice that fits you and feels comfortable. And that's what I told him. I said, like Robert Plant. Robert Plant used to scream and sing.
Yep.
When he did Rising Sand with Alison Krauss, he came into his own. He started singing at his age, and he started singing, and he's better now than he ever was.
He's amazing.
Not singing those high notes. He's singing beautiful notes, you know. So, anyways, God bless you. Take care.